Okay, where are we now? So economic growth remains modest. We're better than we were 10 years ago because 10 years ago we were here, right? That's the recession. Still very slow growth. This is what's making up that growth, contributions by country. This is China, India, US, other emerging markets, all other. Right here is Brazil, they're still a drag. So the largest portion of global growth is still coming from China and India. We're actually very small in terms of growth. We're a massive economy, but in terms of growth, we're not providing a lot of the growth. GDP around the world. So there's a piece that's put out by, I think it's JP Morgan, where it shows a heat map. And the heat map shows, from red, which is decline, to bright green, which is growth. And they just printed a global growth of like 54.7, which is a bright green growth number. It's the best global growth we've had for 5 years. There's a lot of things coming together as Trump takes office, which might give him the opportunity to do nothing and look like a genius. I kind of hope that's what happens. Like that would be a boon, because no one's going to believe he did anything. He's going to tweet about it though. Okay, so interesting. Going back to emerging markets and the growth in emerging markets. In 2007, right here, that's the line where the EU, or the emerging Asia became larger than the EU. Right? This is the zero line that compares the EU versus emerging Asia. Okay, in 2017-ish, EU is going to be less than half the size of emerging Asia. What is that, a decade? A little bit more than a decade, right? Relative to the EU, Asia's doubled in size. That's incredible. That's not showing any sign of slowing down. We talked about this earlier. China's total debt has soared to more than 250% of GDP, doubling over the last decade, just like ours has. But we're going to talk about them, not us. So the way the Chinese work is it's 5-year term, 5-year term. It's coming to the end of Xi Jinping, correct? Maybe, close? Xi Jinping's presidency. He's going to consolidate. He's going to make it look good. It's not going to let things fall apart. However, there are 250% of GDP in debt. That's not a good thing. That's very difficult to maintain. I don't think it happens in 2017. I think it happens tied with the next global recession. When we have another global recession, China's going to see a meltdown, unless they come up with massive amounts of money. They do have lots of money, so that's possible. But that's one of the risks we have. I don't think it happens in 2017, though. Remember we talked about we want immigration? Refugees in Europe, likely be a modest increase to GDP, reflecting the fiscal expansion associated with support to the asylum seekers, as well as expansion in labor supply. One of the primary drivers of GDP, there's 2 drivers of GDP, increased labor supply and increased productivity per unit of labor supply. That is GDP. So if you have more people working, that's a boost to GDP. That's why we need immigration, because we have 0.3% growth. That's the lowest we've had in forever. And that's because so many people are retiring, right? That's all that is. Any retirees? Yeah. Recent retirees, like the last month? Yeah. Waiting for Brexit. It's interesting, we're watching it happen. So Britain never went fully into the EU, right? They just kind of kept the foot out. We've talked about it here, it's been talked about all the time. The EU is a broken system. They're not yet talking about ways to solve the system. There are 3 elections, Germany, France, Netherlands, I think, that are coming up soon. All 3 of those are moving towards the populist parties. We could see a lot of movement in Europe. We could see a lot of decisions to leave, alter the relationship with Europe. If we do, there's a lot of, but this is all priced in. People are anticipating European, the EU, not collapse, but they're anticipating or they're pricing in the idea that EU is not going to grow much, which I think is not a good bet. I think the companies there, whether they're part of the EU or they're independent and they have different different treaties with all the countries independently like they did before. Those companies are still going to produce stuff. Will it change how some companies work? Absolutely. Will it change who they trade with? Absolutely. Will it destroy them all? No. People in Europe have to use toilet paper, right? They have to, I'd say this, toothpaste. Cars will still be purchased. So it's not something to be terrified of, it's just something to be aware of, manage around. Remember we talked about negative yields? Well, when bond prices plummet, when Trump was elected, negative yields largely went away, which gave a lot of relief to pension programs and people that rely on that. You can kind of see the US has no negative yields. We had just a brief moment of negative yield, but most of the negative yields are gone for that 10-year. Okay, this we talked about Federal Reserve tightening monetary policy. This is the dot plot. Every time they do every time they come out after their meeting and do a talk, they offer this dot plot. This is every Fed Reserve, every Fed governor, their anticipation of their vote of where rates will be in 2017, where rates will be in 2018, where rates will be in 2019. And I'm noticing it gets broad, and then it consolidates a little bit, right? So in the near term, they don't have any idea, really. They've got a broad range of possibility. Longer term, they're thinking it's going to go up to 3%. I think what it is they don't know how long it's going to take, and they don't know what Trump is going to do to throw it off course. The reason we want to raise rates isn't because we want everyone to pay more for stuff. It's because we need to be ready for the next emergency. We need to be ready when something happens. If right now we had a global recession, we'd have to print a bunch more money. Like we'd have to do quantitative easing again. And the last couple times we did that, we just don't know how much benefit we got from it. So it's nice to have rates up higher so we can stimulate by lowering them.